So my number three is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, a little movie that you might have heard of. Came out in 2001, directed by Chris Columbus, written by J.K. Rowling, obviously, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, the whole gang. Story logline from IMDb: an orphan boy enrolls in a school of wizardry where he learns the truth about himself, his family, and the terrible evil that haunts the magical world. This is the first of the series, scored by John Williams. So I chose this because I would just want to say that I didn't grow up with a lot of the signature John Williams scores. Like I knew of them, but because I was born in India, I was listening to a very different kind of film music.
Uh-huh.
So I don't really, even though I knew of those scores and those tunes and those movies, I didn't have that kind of relationship. So I think for whatever reason, this is my John Williams score because I was old enough to understand scores, old enough that I'd seen enough movies from Hollywood that I sort of understood the grammar of film scores. So this is kind of the beginning of that for me a little bit. But really what it signifies for me is scores can underline sense of place so beautifully. That's the one big aspect that I really locked into with this score and this with list, this sort of sense of place. So to me, like that main theme that we all know so well, to me, that is kind of it's signature to the movie, it's signature to this world of magic and wizardry, and you're instantly transported to that world. I mean, just imagine this movie if that score was not there. The movie doesn't work. Like, that whole scene when you're getting into Hogwarts the very first time with all the candles hanging and such, it doesn't work if you don't have the score. So, transporting you, creating this world of whimsy and magic, disbelief, it's key to the score. But I think this is where the wizardry of, I guess, John Williams comes into this play as well, is that it's not just that. Like any other composer would just, give you a magical, whimsical score, and that would be that. There's depth to it. He knows that even though on the surface this is like a fun movie, targeted to kids and what have you, but there are some pretty big themes at play here. Themes of childhood, growing up, finding friends, dealing with loss of family, being in a new place where you're vulnerable, you don't understand what's going on. Meanwhile, there are, literally dark forces at play that you're trying to comprehend. There's a bit of a hero's journey struggle here where someone needs to really come into their own being. And watching this movie again recently, I just really locked into that how is the score underlining all of those aspects, but at the same time is very well aware that this movie is about fun and whimsy, and so it's very playful. And I think that is that delicate dance of depth with playfulness that's just so beautifully brought out in the score. And who else than John Williams?
Oh, totally.
So yeah, that's my number three, Harry Potter, the Sorcerer's Stone.
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of things of why I love John Williams, and maybe we'll talk more about him later too in this episode. But I think with this, really, like he is very good at coming up with themes. And like you said, the iconic theme, which is called Hedwig's theme, I remember that was introduced in the trailer for this movie. And I was not someone, I think I'd even talked about this on a previous episode, was not someone who read the books of Harry Potter before the films. I was not a huge fan, but that song, when it played in that trailer, which sounds so magical, it's like this whole really does build the world through that track. I was enthralled. And I went to that screening of that first midnight show of Harry Potter 1, like, with this painted on scar on my forehead, acting like I was a huge fan. And the music, I think, is really a huge part of it. I mean, I bought this soundtrack right afterwards. I even have now like the extended edition soundtrack. It's like 3 discs. And he really just created a lot of amazing themes, which I think is something for me that, I do gravitate towards a lot of scores with really important themes. Like you play that Hedwig's theme and everyone now knows, oh, that's Harry Potter. Like immediately, you just play those first couple notes on the harpsichord or whatever that is. And it's like, oh, I know this is Harry Potter. And the genius of being able to do that, so much so that the marketing team even included it in the trailer. Like they knew how important it was to build a world, this magical world, how important music was going to be in that. And it's one of my favorite scores. Though I prefer the third Potter score that Williams also did actually to this one. I think it brings in a lot of new and more interesting and darker themes while still utilizing, Hedwig's theme. But I think this movie is the blueprint for obviously the rest of the entire franchise. He sets up all the major themes there that are used all the way, through the last film where, other composers would come in and they try to add their own elements to it. But, that iconic theme, you can't get away from. I mean, that's Potter,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But that's also interesting that I didn't think about that the theme is such that it's malleable enough that you can stretch it out in different ways and bring in darker themes, but also represent how the kids grow up and how the world sort of further evolves, which is also pretty genius. So yeah. And on a final note, I would say it just, I don't know if you're going to bring this in this episode, but for me, re-listening to this soundtrack is just my gateway into like a world of happy. So, whenever I could be cleaning on a Saturday morning with nothing really happening, and playing this music for me is sort of just, bringing in a little bit of skip in my step as I'm like sweeping the floors of my apartment. So that's what scores do, right? Like they obviously enhance the movie and the storytelling, but then even more so than the movie, they develop a life of their own that sort of, kind of goes along with you in your regular life, because you're not going to watch the movie all over again, when you're out and about things, but the score lives on. Then that's the power of music in general.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. You put on that score and I feel like I'm going to Hogwarts. You really, it is transportive in that way and can exist outside of even the film.
Yeah.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.